Before we begin this podcast, please be advised that the following episode contains language that some listeners may find offensive and inappropriate. The opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not reflect the views of the podcast producers. Listener discretion is advised.
Last time we left this story, Damion had told us about his upbringing, his failed career in the Army, and his blooming relationship with his now ex-wife. We pick up the story in 2020, 3 years in, and Damion's marriage was on the rocks, teetering on the brink of divorce. What was it that broke up the once happy couple? We'll find out on this episode of Voices of a Killer.
Well, speaking of technology, YouTube, there's a video of you where the investigators are questioning you and stuff like that. And at one point, you're telling a story about you being married to the girl we're talking about. And you had this episode where she woke up and saw you had a knife and you were going to commit suicide. Is that accurate still?
It is, yes.
What would prompt you to do something like that? You got a wife that you love and all this stuff and a baby on the way.
Well, actually, my daughter was born at that time already.
Okay. Yeah. So
that was December 28th of 2018 was that incident.
Okay. So walk me through that. Why would you want to do that?
I've kind of struggled with suicide and just having any kind of will to continue on living ever since I was a mid-teenager.
Yeah.
I can't sit here and tell you exactly why.
Was that the first time that you'd ever done that to where people knew that you were going to try to do something? Or?
No, I had done it before.
How many times?
I want to say, before that incident, maybe twice, 3 times.
Do you feel like it's for attention?
I definitely wanted to, and I got talked down out of it.
What were the attempts on the other ones? The first one?
First time, that was when I was living with my uncle. I had locked myself in my room, and I was talking to my mom, and I just kind of started breaking down, and I ended up grabbing a little, not really a straight, what do they call it, a box cutter.
Box cutter.
I ended up grabbing a box cutter that I used for work, and I was going to go and split my wrists, and my mom ended up knocking me down.
What about the second time?
The second time was an incident. I found out that my girlfriend from high school of like 4.5 years, she had been cheating on me. And so we broke up, and I was just going to basically drink myself to death.
Yes.
I went through, I don't even remember how much alcohol, but I just had all kinds of different bottles in my room, and I just started drinking until I couldn't do anything.
This time that you're married and your wife actually woke up, did y'all have a fight or anything, or an episode where you weren't getting along before she went to bed?
Actually, not that immediate, but leading up to that December.
What was the fight about, or what was the point of contention?
So I had kind of been ruining the relationship over the last maybe 6 to 9 months.
How are you doing that?
I would be drinking a lot. I was doing cocaine.
Did she know you were doing the coke and drinking?
She did, yes.
Did she ever do it with you?
No.
Wow,
no,
so that's
she never got drunk.
Yeah, when one side's doing that and the other's not, that's pretty much going to end it all. And for the record, when both of them are doing it, usually that's going to end it too. But anyway, yeah, that's definitely a way to exit out of a relationship, is to put your attention to a substance. So how bad were you doing that stuff? I
was getting drunk every night. There were times where I'd even tell my wife that I had to work late, and I'd just go to the bar and get tanked.
So were you
come home
this night that she wakes up with you holding a knife and threatening to kill yourself? Were you coming down off of coke?
That night, no, I was not. That was just all alcohol that night.
Yeah,
it was actually tequila. Tequila I cannot handle at all.
Was her reaction that she wanted to help you, or was she just, man, I can't do this anymore?
Her reaction, I don't quite remember too much of it that night. I remember she had asked me for a glass of water, and I went to go get a glass of water, and next thing I remember, she had our pistol in my face, pointing it at me, and our daughter in her arm. And I was really confused.
She was scared of you.
She was, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's
really
It's a big deal because, you're drunk and you wake up, threatening to hurt yourself. What makes her think you can't hurt her child or her. So whenever she pointed that gun at you, what's that?
I absolutely understand where her fear came from.
Yeah.
I don't blame her at all for the way she reacted.
What was your reaction when she pointed the gun at you?
I didn't understand. I was confused and scared. I didn't know why she was doing what she was doing.
What was the resolution for that night? You had to leave, or cops were called, or what?
She ended up leaving and going to her parents. Her parents actually lived about not even 5 minutes away from where we lived.
Did she tell them everything that happened?
I believe so, because she ended up calling the cops, and the cops came to the apartment. And I guess I had wrestled with the cops or something. I really don't remember that part. I just remember waking up
so you went to
the
jail.
Next day. No, I didn't go to jail.
Really?
I woke up the next day in the hospital, and they told me that when I got brought in, I was having some kind of crazy episode, screaming and lashing out. They had to strap me down to the bed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think your issue is, man?
I don't know.
Do you think you're a violent person?
I think I'm violent when I drink.
Damion's substance abuse issues escalated shortly after his 2017 marriage. Alcohol and cocaine were his two drugs of choice, a toxic combination that brought out the worst in Damion. Now, Damion isn't a violent man when sober, and back then he had no criminal record to his name. Under the influence, however, he became quick to lash out, often battling to remember what he'd done the day before after blacking out drunk. As you'd imagine, this took a heavy toll on his marriage. Although Damion's substance abuse was more about self-harm than anything else, his wife lived in constant fear for the safety of herself and her daughter. One critical night, Damion took shots of tequila and wielded a knife in their home. This was the final straw for his wife. She took off with their child, rang the police, and filed for divorce. The divorce proceedings that followed were acrimonious, and Damion lost custody of his only daughter. But that didn't trigger a wake-up call to get sober. Instead, Damion turned closer to alcohol to drown his sorrows even more. That time in his life, Damion tells me, was when he truly hit rock bottom.
Part of the whole theme of your murder case and everything stated by like the prosecutors, the news, is that you had a violent episode. So, and now I'd like to take us to this day that your crime happened. The weeks leading up to that, were you in a downward spiral, do you feel like?
I was sort of. I would say that I was starting to crawl out of that spiral.
Were you still
I had finally hit
stuff?
rock bottom. I'm sorry?
Were you still doing coke at the time?
No, I was just drinking and smoking dabs and weed.
Yeah. And you think previous to that you'd hit rock bottom, so you were kind of climbing out of that?
Yeah, I had finally hit rock bottom about September, towards the end of the summer, beginning of fall. I had hit rock bottom. I hadn't seen my daughter in 3 months. I needed to start getting my life together, so I had started crawling out. I was using a lot of prostitutes at the time, drinking every single night until I blacked out. There were a few incidences where I got in a bar fight.
Yeah.
I got part of my soul fractured in one of them. But I realized I needed to start pulling myself out of that, so I started getting my daughter once a week.
So you were getting your daughter?
I was at the time, yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were getting prostitutes. You kind of gave up on the dating apps and went to just pay for sex?
Pretty much, yeah.
So you're getting these prostitutes pretty regularly. How regular do you think you're doing this?
Usually a couple times a week.
Oh, wow. How much does that cost you each time, you think?
A couple $100.
Damn.
The quick visit is probably somewhere between $80 and $120.
So these girls, did you end up just getting their direct phone numbers and you call them whenever you want, or you just always had to find them on these apps?
I usually use websites on the internet. They would post their phone number, you text the number, and they respond.
Interesting. What apps are those?
Escort Alligator, Escort Index. Up until not too long before all of this had happened, I would use Backpage.
Did you ever get like a cop try to catch you or anything?
No, I always worried about that, but it never really actually happened in all the times that I did.
So you're actually on one of these apps when you met your victim, who is 22-year-old Amethyst Killian, and she was actually pregnant. Was she on one of these apps, by the way?
She was, yes.
Okay, and I just want to make sure and see what your thoughts were. And I'm pretty sure they kind of low key about it on the news and stuff. But from my understanding, she was a sex worker. She was 5 months pregnant. Did you ever meet her before this?
I did. I actually used her quite a few, not a lot, but I used her a few times, yes.
What was she like? Was she a drug addict? Why was she doing this? Support her kids?
From what I've gathered, yes, she was a drug addict, but she was into fentanyl. I was told that she actually had fentanyl in her system when they did the autopsy.
Wow. That's so sad, man, that she's doing that while she's pregnant. Was she pregnant the other times that you were around her?
No. I never even knew that she was pregnant. I knew that she had a kid.
What if it's your baby that was, if she wasn't pregnant at the time and you'd seen her and then later on you saw her again as a customer and she's pregnant, what if that's your baby?
I have had that thought.
Has anybody tried to figure that out? The authorities?
Not that I know of.
That's crazy, dude. That might be your freaking baby.
I mean, it's possible because I had used her a couple months earlier that year. I had used her services.
Do you remember the timeline? She's 5 months. She's 5 months pregnant on the day that she's murdered. 5 months prior to that, did you see her around that time?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I just know it was earlier that year.
So this time that this crime occurred, did you get a hold of her through the app or did you have a direct phone number for her?
I had a phone number. I don't know if it was her direct number or if it was one of those numbers you get from an app, but I did have a direct line to her.
And that's how you connected with her?
Yeah.
What was your first thing you said? Hey, you got some time or how does that work?
So typically when you solicit an escort, I try to keep it low key. Just, hey, I'm looking to have fun tonight. You know, what are you trying to do?
What was her response?
She usually would let me know I'm free between this time and this time. And I would let her know how much time I was looking for. And then she would let me know. She'd just shoot a number. But it was usually pretty quick. And then we would just set a time and meet up.
This time, where was the meet at?
It was in St. Peter's. We usually met behind this bar, which I guess was right next to where she lived.
Around September of 2020, Damion tells me his life had fallen off the rails. To cope with a bitter divorce and custody battle, Damion dove headfirst into reckless behaviors, drinking heavily, picking up fights in bars, and hiring prostitutes off escort apps. And one of the sex workers he used pretty regularly was a 22-year-old woman called Amethyst Killian. Amethyst, known as Ame to loved ones, was a young mother with 2 little kids. She must have had a penchant for rock and reggae because both her kids were named after musicians, 6-year-old Marley after Bob Marley, and 11-month-old Hendrix after Jimi Hendrix. By all accounts, from the information we can gather from the news articles that emerged after this crime, Amethyst Killian was a devoted mother who always put her kids first. These news articles, however, skirted around an important fact. Amethyst had recently resorted to sex work to scrape up some extra cash. Later on, her father told the press that Amethyst had been battling a drug addiction for some time and turned to prostitution to maintain her habit. She was deep into her addiction by late November 2020. By the time her phone buzzed with a hookup text from Damion, she was also 5 months pregnant with her 3rd child. Early on Thanksgiving morning around 1 a.m., Amethyst snuck downstairs to the front door of her St. Peter's house. Her stepfather, who was still awake, was surprised to see her up so early. Amethyst told him she was just taking a walk to the nearby Quick Trip gas station for cigarettes and would be back soon. As he would later recall, Amethyst's stepfather warned her to be careful as he watched her slip out the door. He had no reason to think she wouldn't come back, not least because that evening was Thanksgiving and Amethyst and her mother had been long planning a green bean casserole bake-off for dinner. Amethyst would not make it to the Thanksgiving bake-off. In fact, she would never return to home as she'd promised. After the break, we find out exactly what happened to her in the early hours of Thursday morning.
So where did she end up meeting you? Behind a bar? Is that what you said?
Yeah, there's a bar there on, it's like Old St. Peter's. I'm not sure what the name of the bar is. There's a little parking lot.
Okay, so it's like outside. Does she like get in the vehicle with you or what?
No, I actually got dropped off by an Uber, all kinds of stuff.
Whenever you first see her and you agree to meet, you show up first or she's there?
I showed up first.
She's walking up and you notice, because she's 5 months pregnant, you had to notice, did you?
I didn't. She actually had on a big, I would imagine it was her boyfriend or fiance's hoodie.
Trying to hide it, you think?
Hoodie on. I think so.
Gotcha. So whenever she walks up, does she look like she's kind of been like tense or worried about anything? Or, hey, let's, do this, make some money and get out of here? What?
No, she was usually real casual with me because I had used her multiple times before. So she'd seen me and we kind of was like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
I wouldn't really call us friends, but we knew each other. Like I knew she had kids. I didn't know that she was engaged to somebody, but I knew she had kids.
So when she walks up, do y'all give each other a hug?
No, there's no intimacy involved.
And did y'all immediately go to a spot that it was secluded?
Yeah, there's a little park behind there. There's like a park with a playground and a baseball field and a big grass area. We went over to the restroom building that's part of the park.
Yeah. You paid for straight sex?
Yeah. So we were going to go into the restroom, but the restroom was locked. So we were going to do it right out there.
Did she usually require the money first?
Yeah. In which I had no problem giving it.
How much did she charge you?
$150.
Did you give her the $150 before?
Yes.
So after you give her the money, do y'all just immediately have sex?
No, I had actually originally wanted $120 was just for sex straight up, but I gave her the $150 to get oral beforehand.
Did she agree upon that?
She did, yeah.
Did she perform oral on you?
She did, yes. But we actually ended up getting a cop in the middle of it. A cop car drove by down the road, perpendicular to the road next to where we were at.
How long did that disrupt you?
So we both seen the cop car roll by, so we both stopped, and we end up starting to walk back towards the parking lot, and we're talking about where else we could go, and we ended up seeing the building where everything ended up happening.
Okay, so is that a building you went into or around the back or something? Right
in front of the building. So the way the building is, it's set up to where it's right next to the embankment by the highway.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so you're enclosed between the embankment of the highway and the building, and then there's a fence with a bunch of like brush and stuff.
So did y'all get around all the way to the side and start up again?
So we got over to in front of the building, and she was trying to say that she didn't want to do it anymore. And I didn't understand why it was like her whole demeanor and everything just changed all of a sudden. And it was really odd. I had never experienced that before.
Do you feel like it was maybe a combination of she had already performed oral on you, and then too much time went by, she had the money in her pocket, and she felt like the job was complete and she wanted to go get high?
I think so. I think she just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, because she already had my money, and I think she felt like she already did something. But we had only done oral for maybe 5 minutes. I was upset that she was trying to take off with that money.
Was it pretty quickly to get into yelling and stuff?
Yeah, it got up there pretty fast.
So
because I didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah, so she's like basically sticking to her gun, saying that she's done.
Yeah.
Did you have any weapons on you?
I did not.
You had no weapons whatsoever? I
did not.
Did she have any weapons on her?
She pulled a knife out of the big black hoodie that she had on.
Big black hoodie? She pulled out. What kind of knife was it?
Like a small, like a little pocket knife.
Whenever she pulled that out, how far do you think you were from her?
Maybe 1.5 feet.
Did she pull it out because you tried to grab her from leaving?
Yes.
What did you do? You grabbed her hoodie and tried to hold her there?
I grabbed her wrist.
At any point in time up to this point, did you know she was pregnant?
I did not.
Whenever you grabbed her and she pulled the knife out, did you let go of her? Or what was your reaction?
I let go of her wrist that didn't have the knife, and I immediately grabbed for the knife. And we began getting into a tussle.
You're trying to basically take the knife from her?
Yeah, and at that point, I kind of snapped. We tussled up against the building and then fell down in the grass. We were kind of partly on the grass.
How long did it take for you to wrestle the knife from her?
I don't know. She was able to get a few slices in on me.
So she was actually able to stab you a little bit?
A little bit, yeah.
Was that recorded in the courts whenever you went?
I'm not sure.
You weren't at the trial, or did you take a plea deal?
I took a plea deal.
So you wrestle the knife from her. The minute you get the knife in your possession, your hand, what position are you in and what position is she in?
She is like partly on the cement, partly on the grass, and I'm like to the side caddy corner to her. It would almost be like I guess in UFC terms, it'd be like a half guard almost.
Right. And at that moment, the position you're talking about right now, is that whenever you threw the first blow with the knife?
Yeah. Like I said, it was like something broke. That's the best to describe it. Like a vase inside my head just broke and the floodgates were released.
Do you remember the first place you stabbed her?
I believe it was in the side of her head. I guess that would be her left side.
Yeah. Did that penetrate her skull?
I'm not sure. Most of everything at this point it's a lot of images and sounds.
Well, so here's the deal. Because you said that you kind of lost it, and 20 stab wounds. It's if somebody takes the time and they go through the motion with the jab and they count 20 times out, that is that's a lot of jabs that your arm is doing over and over and over again. And you did 20 of those, as reported by the prosecutors and everything. What makes you stop at 20, or why not 5? Why not 40? Do you have an answer to that?
I don't think I really do have an answer. I didn't really have any kind of agenda or plan or anything like that. Like I said, it was like a light switch just went off. So
was she actually fighting all the way up to the 20th time you stabbed her?
I would believe so. Like I said, it's a lot of foggy images and sounds, mostly screams. But yeah, she did.
The murder of Amethyst Killian can best be described as a rage crime. A sudden, uncontainable violence erupted from Damion when he was denied the sex he had paid for. Years later, Damion's memory of the crime is hazy at best, but here's a quick rehash of what happened that night. Damion and Amethyst met up in the parking lot of a bar in Old Town, St. Peter's. Behind the restroom in a nearby park, they had intercourse, but were cut short by a police car driving by. They then moved elsewhere, but Amethyst, with the money in her pocket, refused to carry on. This made Damion angry, but it was only when Amethyst pulled out a pocket knife that something inside him truly snapped. Damion compares that moment to a vase breaking, a total shattering of his senses. Blinded by rage, he wrestled Amethyst to the ground, grabbed the knife, and stabbed her a total of 20 times in the head, neck, and abdomen. By the time his rage had subsided, it was over. Amethyst lay dead, as did her unborn fetus. Damion fled the crime scene, though not before he was captured by a security camera as he made his way home. Less than a day later, the body would be discovered and the case ruled a homicide. The murder of Amethyst Killian, a beautiful young mother, caught the imagination of the public and stirred up a media frenzy. Perhaps spurred on by the public's interest in this case, St. Peter's police swung into action and solved the case within a week. The news report you're about to hear, from Fox 2 St. Louis, details Damion's arrest and the investigators that caught him.
And from one tragic story to another one, a disturbing revelation. A pregnant St. Peter's woman found murdered not far from her home last week had been stabbed more than 20 times. I found out more today from St. Charles County Prosecutor Tim Lomar.
The victim was stabbed over 20 times, mostly in the head and neck region, as well as the abdomen region.
22-year-old Amy Killian had gone to meet a man at 1:15 in the morning on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. She met him online. The location was very close to her house.
They had made connections through an online website. They exchanged numbers and communicated throughout the evening, agreed to meet up, and the intention was to engage in consensual sex.
Her body was found Friday morning near her home, close to Main Street in St. Peter's, next to Highway 70 and Quick Trip. Prosecuting attorney Tim Lomar says they don't have a motive yet, but that it was a rage killing and a target killing.
There was an item at the crime scene, and in the text exchange, the defendant indicates that he just stopped at a gas station and bought this particular item.
Using that information, detectives utilized a lot of technology and found their suspect, 27-year-old Damion Delgado of O'Fallon, Missouri. He is charged with murder 1, armed criminal action, and murder 2. Amy was 5 months pregnant with her third child, a baby boy. Police informed Amy's mom, Stacy, about the charges this morning.
I'm grateful for the detectives and all their hard work, but there's still so many questions to be answered. That's when I found out that she was definitely stabbed to death.
Now Stacy is trying to figure out how she is going to explain to her 6-year-old granddaughter, Marley, and 1-year-old grandson, Hendrix, how their mom died.
I still don't understand how someone can do this to anybody.
There's a good chance that Damion would have gotten away with this crime if it hadn't been for the efforts of the St. Peter's Police Department. Although Damion's blood was found at the scene of the crime, his DNA wasn't on police file, making the blood untraceable. The case could have easily reached a dead end if there hadn't been a strong digital trail that led the police to Damion Delgado. Earlier in our conversation, Damion mentioned his reliance on technology. Ironically, this was instrumental in helping police crack the case. The investigation began in earnest on Thanksgiving evening when Amethyst's mom filed a missing persons report. By Friday, a search effort had uncovered Amethyst's body, stashed in some brush in North Church Street. Investigators then subpoenaed Amethyst's phone records and found her last texts with Damion, then an unknown suspect. Another breakthrough happened when officers noticed that Damion had a distinctive gait in the gas station footage. They used this to place him at the crime scene. By identifying his unusual walk in another piece of footage close to the park where Amethyst had been killed, through a mix of phone records, IP addresses, credit card details, and surveillance footage, Damion was caught as Amethyst's killer. But there was a tragic twist in this tale that truly shocked not only the public, but Damion himself. We'll find out what that is on the next episode of Voices of a Killer. If you want to find out what happens next, right now, you can sign up at patreon.com/voicesofakiller. There you can find bonus content, early access, ad-free listening, and access to our chat community. So go to patreon.com/voicesofakiller to sign up now.
Your support is what keeps us passionate about bringing these stories to you.
I want to thank Damion for sharing his story with us today. His ability to be open and honest is what makes this podcast so special.
That's a wrap on this episode of Voices of a Killer. A big shout out to Sonic Futures, who handled the production, audio editing, music licensing, and promotion of this podcast. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, make sure to visit our website at voicesofakiller.com. There you can find previous episodes, transcripts, and additional information about the podcast. Lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your feedback helps us improve and reach new listeners. Thank you for your support, and we can't wait to share more stories with you in the future. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Toby, and we'll see you next time on Voices of a Killer.